It's now time for Party Chat Sports.
The only thing else I got to say is, how about them Cowboys?
Well, I was hoping not to have to make a video like this 3 weeks into the season. Co-star in the background, so that's cool. He's having a good time back there. It's not looking good. Not looking good for the Cowboys. Pretty much nightmare scenario to start the season. You come out against a Browns team and look pretty good against what we are now realizing is a terrible team. At least the offense, because they can't do anything with Deshaun Watson at quarterback. But then you spend the next 2 weeks just getting obliterated by a team that in the Saints, where we just saw how they played last week against the Eagles. It's very possible that they're, above average, but not like an elite team like they played. They played like an elite team when they were facing our poverty defense. But, so we'll see what happens with them. But you get annihilated by the Saints, and then you go and you play the Ravens at home. Both games at home, actually. Not to mention that the last playoff game was at home, where you also got annihilated. Anyways, Ravens come to your house. They push you around. They kick you around for 3.5 quarters. And then, you decide to start scoring some offense. And the comeback to me, the Ravens didn't give up, but they weren't, on offense at least, they weren't like doing all their good plays still. So offensively, they had slowed down and, were just coasting to the end of the game. Defensively, they were still doing some of the stuff they were doing all game. So that was at least good to see from an offensive point of view. But from the defensive point of view, I mean, we're not stopping anything. We couldn't stop, a nosebleed. We're like the worst defense in the NFL, defending the run by a large margin as far as EPA per play goes. Even our pass defense isn't good. I think that comes down to a lot. Obviously, Deron Bland is injured. We'll talk about it later about what could have been done to kind of, help the defense. But anyways, we'll just talk about the game here real quick. Donovan Wilson, he hits people hard, and I love that. I'm not sure he knows what he's doing on any play where there's not a free line to the ball carrier. So that's an issue in the pass game. And the run game, not a single one of our defensive tackles is good against the run, which is, kind of like their whole thing, their whole job. Osa is really good against the pass, but so is like every other defensive lineman that we have. Not really, but, and he's, because of the depth that we have at tackle, he's going to have to play, almost the whole game until you start sliding in like Chauncey Golston, who again is more of a rusher, not a run stopper. Then you've got Mozzie in his second year, who has not taken any steps so far. He's slow off the ball. He gets, most of the time, what the issue is Mozzie's getting blasted 5 to 10 yards out of the gap, and there's just a massive hole, or our linebackers don't have the right angles, or they can't fill the gaps properly because it's just exploded. So he's getting, shoved out of the play almost immediately. He did do better in the fourth quarter, but like I said, the run game that the Ravens were using in the fourth quarter was toned down. So it wasn't, they were just doing normal like inside runs. They weren't popping it outside or anything or running the quarterback as much. So if that was actually a little step forward, I mean, a small sample size, I doubt he keeps it moving, but we'll see. Other than that, man, we just don't have any defense tackles, and this is not a new problem. The last, I don't know, 3-4 years, maybe even longer, our run defense has been what basically takes us out of the playoffs. At least a major contributing factor. You go back to last year was a combination of a lot of things. The pass defense wasn't good. The run defense wasn't good. Aaron Jones owns us. We already knew that. Going back to the year before that against the Niners, Deebo Samuel had a lot of yards on the ground. Going back before that, it was the Niners again. And then I'm thinking, even all the way back to when we played the Rams and we let, was it CJ Anderson go for like 200 yards or something like that. Like, it has been a problem for a long time. And we haven't done anything to solve it. The best move that we made was trading for Jonathan Hankins 2 years ago, I think. And then I think we gave him a 1-year deal after that. He was here last year. But then we let him walk. And I think he signed with the Seahawks for like, I don't remember his contract now, but it's low dollars. Like, it's $5 million or less. He would instantly be the best run stopping defensive tackle on the team. If he was still here. So letting him walk was a terrible mistake. And bringing in a couple guys who are older, who one was, kind of out of the game a little bit, just not good players. I shouldn't say not good. Well, currently they're not good players right now. Maybe they'll get back to it, but they're not solving your issues. They're Band-Aids and they're off-brand Band-Aids. I mean, they're already falling off. We put one on freaking IR and he's not even injured. He was on Twitter saying, or it was media or whatever it was, saying like, yeah, I'm not even hurt. So we'll let them, the powers that be, do what they're doing or whatever it was. So he's not injured. He just got put on IR because he was that bad against the Saints. Him and Mozzie were both getting blasted off the ball. So you just can't have that. And I mean, that's like the main focal point of the defense. I think the DBs will get right. They could have brought back Gilmore pretty easily, I think. It's a shame they didn't. I don't know why they didn't. Obviously, you have Diggs and Bland and Jordan Lewis, so you think you're good going into the season, but corner depth is always an issue, and a vet like Gilmore, who stepped up in a lot of games for us last year, he would have been great to have on the team still. He could still play. He's still playing in Minnesota pretty well, so that's just another thing he could have done that didn't get done. And the whole, like, story of the offseason and heading into the season was that Jerry comes out, he says we're all in, and then makes 0 moves. Our free agency consists of Eric Kendricks, who originally signed with the Niners, and the only reason we were able to get him was because he wanted to play with Zim, which we'll talk about Zim in a little bit. Like, you lucked into that one. He's been decent so far, which is good. Again, a lot of the issues stem from the defensive line not being able to do what they need to do to allow linebackers to get to where they need to be. But like I said, I mean, your best free agent you lucked into, and it's not even like an aggressive free agent signing. He's not as good as he was, in his prime on the Vikings. He spent some time with the Chargers. So other than that, I mean, we literally Jerry says all in, and then just relies, doesn't bring back Tyron Smith, doesn't bring back Hankins, doesn't bring back Pollard, which was fine if you had a better replacement plan than Rico Dowdle and the ghost of Zeke Elliott. Unfortunately, I thought some players would play better than they have. Um, I don't know. I got the shirt on, as you can see. It's even it's a little beat up now, which is a little representation of how the things are going. Um, but I said this when I made the video last year, the disaster in Dallas video. If you've seen that, the the getting hyped for games every week, and I've always got my jersey on. Last year I wore my Dak jersey. We'll talk about the offense in a second. Don't you worry. I wore my Dak jersey every game, and then this year, in the first week, I got a Larry Allen jersey. So I was like, oh, maybe the Larry Allen jersey will do it for us. We played pretty good in this game. I was back home for the Saints game, so didn't get to wear a jersey for that one. Came back home to Arizona and put the Larry Allen back jersey on just to watch the Cowboys get their teeth kicked out. And it just those two losses back to back at home just kind of take the whole excitement and life out of the season because of what I stated about our recent playoff losses. Was that's like one of, if not the main factor of why we've been losing all the time in the playoffs. And it's already shown its ugly head twice in 3 weeks. And maybe if the Browns offensive line was at full health and maybe even Nick Chubb was back, it could have even happened week one, but it didn't. And it's not going to get any easier. You've got the Lions coming up here pretty quick. You've got the 49ers, the Commanders, who look pretty good, although not necessarily their run game, but still the division isn't getting any weaker. The Eagles, who have been able to run pretty well with Saquon. They've got two running backs, Saquon and Hurts. So, anyways, um, it's just disappointing. It's disappointing, to say the least. Like, you want to see steps made to improve upon last year, especially when we've come up short so many times in similar fashion, and you end up going backwards. As other teams are improving, and when you look at other teams who compete for the Super Bowl, the Chiefs, of course, they weren't satisfied with the team that they had last year just because they won the Super Bowl. They go out and they get Hollywood Brown, and they draft Xavier Worthy, and these other things, and it's who else? The Eagles are always adding people, although I have things to say about that, but they're always trying. They're at least trying. They're adding people. They're actively trying to make their team better. The only way the Cowboys are actively trying to make the team better is through the draft. Luckily, they've been pretty successful, but rookies, no matter how good they are, rarely make instant impact and at least consistent impact. I mean, you look at Tyler Guyton, who he was a project coming out of the draft, and he's done okay, but he is not an upgrade or an equal to Tyron Smith. If we had Tyron Smith still playing left tackle and Guyton learning for a year or two, that would be a much better situation, conducive to winning a Super Bowl. That's actively building your roster to continue to get better as players are leaving, instead of, Tyron Smith's gone, this rookie who is like this developmental project has to come in and start immediately. Same with our center. He's done pretty good as well. Our starting outside corner opposite of Diggs is like a 5th or 6th round rookie in Kalen Carson, who got torched. Well, he didn't get torched, but absolute terrible tackle attempt on Nelson Aguilar against the Ravens. Got his freaking face shoved through the dirt by Derrick Henry on a stiff arm. He played good week one against a sorry Browns team. Amari had him cooked a few times, but still expecting these young players to come in and be the upgrades to your team, it's never going to happen. I mean, you might get upgrades at wide receiver, probably is wide receiver and running back. Maybe defensive end are positions where maybe you can get a rookie that would actually be an improvement upon your team as it was to last year, like you see with Marvin Harrison and you see with Neighbors. But wide receiver wasn't our well, it is kind of a need actually, but not number one wide receiver, and defensive end are pretty set there. Other than Tank Lawrence didn't do very well, and hasn't been doing very well, at least in past sets. He's always been a relatively good run defender. Well, not relatively. He's been a great run defender. But this year, he's not doing as well, at least in my opinion. But again, the whole team kind of you can't have one person doing their job and then the middle of the line is getting dominated and expect anything to go up. Anyways, the team has just not been upgraded. It's not a realist. It's not a competitive team. It's not. No moves were made to make this a competitive team. I know Jerry and Steven probably think that paying CD and paying Dak are the moves, are the all-in moves. It baffles me how that could even, realistically be an explanation, because you're paying two players who are already on the team. Whether they're, whether you think they're the greatest or the worst, it's still not an upgrade. Even if they come into this season and they're somehow doing better than they were last season, which would be hard to top because they both had a really great season last year. I mean, Dak was MVP runner up and CD was, keeping up there in the offensive player of the year, race. So, it's still not an upgrade. Every year they're like, yeah, we like our guys. Even now, especially now, we get, manhandled by the Ravens, and we have this little comeback at the end, which was a good sign for the offense, but still, you needed the onside kick, which is not happening. It probably won't ever happen again the rest of the season. It's a low percentage play. And then Jerry says, I like the fight that we saw there at the end. I like our guys. I like our personnel. It's not a personnel issue. Then what is it? That's the worst outcome for the game that we just saw, because Jerry now gets to be complacent. He thinks that our team is better than it is, instead of seeing that we got dominated for 3.5 quarters. And he probably did not turn on the film and watch Mozzie and the other defensive tackles get blown back 10 yards every play. But anyways, unfortunately, that means there's probably no trades to be had for the Cowboys here before the deadline. If it is, I expect it to be minimal. Jerry, every once in a while, Jerry is a liar, and he won't give away his plans. He'll say, we like our guys, and then they go and add a couple people, but it still won't be like a big enough impact to change the outcome, the outlook on the season. It needed to be done in the draft. Obviously, we tried to get it with Mozzie, didn't work. Could have used some more resources. In free agency, keeping Jonathan Hankins would have been huge. Just kind of talking in circles. It falls on Jerry's shoulders, who not too long ago was saying that no one else could do the GM job as good as he can. Any GM that's gone 30 years without Super Bowl success, even low playoff success. I mean, Dak's won 2 games. Romo's won. I don't remember how many Romo won. A couple, probably. Like, no team success at all. Regular season success, sure. No postseason success in 30 years. Any GM with that record is getting fired after 5 years, depending on how bad it went or how good it went. 15 maybe. depending on how, if they're a really good drafter or something like that, or the players like some, I don't know. But 30 years of zero success, and you think that you are doing the job to the best of your ability or better than anyone else could. It's not a serious organization, unfortunately. It's not run seriously. It's not run in a way that would allow you to compete. It's run in a way to maximize dollars, to bring in the most views, to be worth the most money, which, yeah, sure. If that is his goal, he's doing a great job. Maybe he is the best GM for that scenario. But then you're lying anytime you say you want to win a Super Bowl because you're not actively trying to do it. And unfortunately, there's nothing we can do. He's the owner. He's not firing himself. And he's getting a little bit older. Next in line will be Steven, who is just as bad, maybe worse. It's just a bummer. It's looking now like we're gonna have to either luck into some success by either facing a relatively easy playoff schedule, or just few plays go the right way that normally don't. Ball bounces the right way a few times, and that's determines the outcome, instead of actually building a full roster, a complete roster that can compete. You don't see contenders get blown out at home 2 weeks in a row. You just don't. It's not something that happens. You don't see contenders have the worst ranked defense against the run and one of the worst against the pass and be successful. It's just not. It's not possible. It's not possible. And so, I spent enough time on the construction of the roster. Let me flip over to offense here, because they're definitely not without their blame. For 3.5 quarters, they were terrible. I thought CD getting his money would kind of chill him out a little bit. Turns out that was wrong. He had quite the diva moment, which most star wide receivers are divas. It's kind of like their stereotype, so shouldn't be too surprised. But we need, with the lack of other weapons on the team, no one's afraid of our running backs, as shown by how we've played, what the defenses have done through 3 weeks. No one's scared of the running backs. No one's scared of Brandon Cooks. No one's scared of Tolbert. No one's scared of, Jalen Brooks. People may be scared of Jake Ferguson, but he was hurt last week, so he's still good. Your weapons are Dak, CD, and Jake Ferguson. And Cooks can perform, but no one's worried about him. Like no one's taking eyes off of CD so they can check and see where Cooks is at. So when you have limited targets and weapons, you need them to perform every week to the best of their ability. And CD coming out and obviously missed all offseason and preseason, training camp, all that stuff. There's going to be a slow start, but this needs to turn around quickly, because he comes out in this game and one of the biggest plays in the game is we're down like 10-3 or something like that, or yeah, I think it was 10-3 or maybe even 14-3, I think. And CD catches the ball and fumbles in the red zone. Like, that cannot happen. And especially if our defense is going to remain how it is, that cannot happen. And then for the rest of the game, he had a pass interference was called on him, which rightfully so it was. But it gets canceled out by a holding, which I think, when these penalties offset and one's like a 30-yard penalty and the other one's 10, like, how does that offset? Anyways, he was, slamming the ground and goes over the sidelines, and he's yapping at freaking Dak and Zach Martin, and, he just is in a crybaby mood the rest of the game, and he leaves the locker room before media gets there, and he's nowhere to be found for media to talk to him, and just not a good attitude. Not a good attitude. And you can't – we saw that in the playoff game for some strange reason. He was in his head the entire time and just could not get anything going. And unfortunately, like, if that's going to happen every time we play a big game, because this was a relatively big game against – you just get blown out at home. You're playing a team that should be good who's on the ropes at 0-2, because going to 0-3 is not good for your playoff success historically. A team. This was a pretty big game. Let's see if you can get back. And he got out of it pretty quickly. So we need to turn around from him, and gotta stop with this crybaby stuff. During at the end of the game, if you didn't get 12 catches or 12 15 targets, you only got 8, and you caught 6 of them, like, no problems. Like, go ahead and tell Dak you want more targets after the game. But during the game, like, just focus. Just focus. There's a game to win. Like, you can't be worried about whether you're getting the ball or not. We got to win some games. And Dak did not play a good game for 3.5 quarters. He was forcing the ball forcing a lot to CD, which I understand why, of course, as we saw what CD was, getting mad about. But, like, you just can't do that, because, first of all, our receivers aren't getting open. From what I've seen, CD, our best receiver, has an average of 1.9 yards of separation or something like that, which is terrible, especially on wide receiver 1 terms. That is not good. And that's the best on the team. So everyone else is getting, clamped too. So he has to make tight window throws, I understand, but doing it more than you already have to is not a good recipe for success. He got away with some where, especially towards the end of the game, he threw one up to Cooks, who it wasn't open, and Cooks reaches up and yanks the defender down. Obviously, pass interference, but that doesn't count as a interception for Dak. He's got to be better. He turned it on there at the end. And funnily enough, at least on the first touchdown, I think it was, CD was off to the sideline. CD didn't play for that first touchdown. I think it was. Maybe it was one of the other ones during the comeback. And we marched down the field. Dak Cooks all the way down the field, scores a touchdown while CD was off on the sidelines crying. So hopefully that got him in the right state of mind that, go ahead and be a crybaby. You go sit off to the side, keep crying. We got a game to play. But Dak is somehow first in the league in passing yards, without any great games yet. There hasn't been any great games by him. There's been good sections, but not like a full great game. So he needs to improve. Ferguson has been good, just he missed time with the knee injury last week. So still excited about him. But Cooks, I mean, you can't really blame him. He's getting old. He's still out there. He's still, trying to win. He's not crying about targets or catches or anything like that, yards. He's still trying to do his job. It's just he's older now, obviously, and that comes for everyone at some point in time. Tolbert, Jalen Brooks, young guys who, Jalen Brooks, against the Saints, just falls down and Dak throws an interception. Like, you need a little bit more production from your wide receiver 3s, and the wide receivers aren't necessarily much different than last year. The only one we're missing is Gallup. But you also don't have any targets coming out of the backfield, like you could do with Pollard. Zeke's never really been good at it. Maybe when he was really young, but other than that, he, just short screens he could take. But he's never really been a good receiver. And Rico Dowdle hasn't really been either. Your second or third best receiver this game was probably Hunter Lipke, the fullback. That just goes to show what the pass catching is like. He might even be the best running back. Honestly, we'll have to give him some catch or some rushes, but just bad all around. Just bad all around. And when your defense is bad, you got to score points to at least try to come back. That's how it was in 2020 before Dak got hurt. We the Falcons game comes to mind. We let up like 38 points or something crazy like that, and we win because onside kick that the Falcons forgot they could recover. But we scored 40, and Dak was on pace for like 6,000 yards passing before he got hurt. Like that's the only way to combat this bad defense is to continue to put up points and hope that your defense can get a stop. And it's not happening. And to be honest, we'll talk about the coaching here for a second. Last year, I thought Mike was a good coach. And a lot of people going into the playoffs are like, if he loses, he's fired. He's gone. I was like, no, dude, you're crazy. Like, that's so stupid. And then you get demolished by the Packers, and I wanted him gone. I wanted him gone. I still want him gone. The problem is, I think his offense relies on his players being better than the people on defense. And right now, they're not. They're just not. And, and maybe like CD, okay, you got CD who's better than the people lined up across from him. At least one. Is he better than the two people that are guarding him because no one else is, on the offense is scaring the defense, so he's double covered? Is Ferguson better? Probably against certain linebackers and things like that. Definitely not all of them. But Brandon Cooks, like what I was just talking about before with the offense, like the pieces aren't good enough to just rely on being better than the other team. You got to get creative. You see all successful offenses are motioning all the time, very often, to give, a better read on the defense, what the defense is doing, and to confuse the defense as well as, this guy's here and then he's coming over here. You got all this kind of misdirection and, to make things interesting. So it's not just, oh, I'm lined up on my guy. He's going to, come do whatever route, whatever. And I just got to worry about him. No, it's this guy's going this way, that way, whatever. That's what all the Shanahan tree offenses are doing, stuff like that. The Lions with what's his name? How do I forget his name? Ben Johnson. That's what all the good offenses are doing, not a coach who his prime was when they went 10 years ago, whatever it was, when the Packers won the Super Bowl. Like, it's over. I think Mike's a good guy. I think he is actually a good coach from a coaching perspective and how he treats the players and things like that. But from like a play caller and, offensive minded guy, he's not built for today's NFL. Going over to Zimmer too, unfortunately, like it's hard to gauge how well Zimmer's done. A lot of after the Packers loss, it kind of felt like maybe it was Quinn's defense that was that was liable to give up a lot of yards at times. You give up 30-some, 40-some points in the playoffs and you think, maybe it was the coordinator. Because at the time, you look at the roster and it's like, hey, the roster's pretty good. At least that's what it felt like. And, you got to try to make a change. And to be fair, Jerry didn't make a change. It wasn't him trying. Quinn obviously accepted the job with the Commanders. So you bring in Zimmer, who, had success with the Vikings back in the day. But again, another kind of old school coach. It's hard to tell whether or not he's good or bad because of how bad the players are getting beat. It's like, okay, is it the player? Is it the scheme not putting them in the right position? Or is it the player not performing? And I think, obviously, for the defensive tackles, it's the player not performing. It's hard for the defensive tackle to be out of position. But they're getting absolutely demolished. For like the safeties and DBs, linebackers, I think the linebackers have been pretty good. Again, hard to do your job when the defensive tackles are getting demolished. And then like Donovan Wilson, who I mentioned earlier, has not been good. He has not been in position to make tackles or in coverage. Really, the safeties in general. And so I don't know what Zimmer can do to fix that. There's scheme will only take you so far if the players do not have the skill or talent or know-how somehow to perform what's being asked of them. And so it's hard to tell whether Zimmer is not as good as Quinn, or maybe he's just as good, maybe he's better, but the players just cannot fulfill what they're supposed to do. And so it's hard to tell. And he's on a 1-year deal. Same with McCarthy. It's hard to see the coaching staff coming back. I know Jerry's probably going to want Bill Belichick. Unfortunately, that seems super likely. I don't think he's going to be the answer. First of all, he's 70 some years old, like 75. He probably would be a decent defensive coordinator, though. You look at the Patriots in his final few years, they weren't great. You know, they had decent defenses. They weren't the best in the league by any means. A lot of that was due to him also like acting as GM, not a very good drafter. Which, you know, maybe paired up with Cowboys drafting skills, maybe it could work, but you know, and then who's he going to pick for offensive coordinator? Probably no one under the age of, 40, 45, It's probably going to be Matt Patricia or something stupid. It's just, it'll be another safe pick. It won't be a serious contending pick. A serious pick for head coach next year is get Ben Johnson here, get Bobby Slowick, get Clint Kubiak, offer Sean McVay whatever Fox or CBS is offering him to go be in the booth. Match that to get him to instead of suffering through the rebuild of the Rams or retiring, get him to come to Dallas for whatever money he writes in the check. That's a real move. I would love McVay. There's a lot of hoops to jump through for that, so that's a bit of wishful thinking, but that's a contending move. Bill Belichick is not a contending move. It's just not. And we see defensive schemes and things kind of changing how successful offenses are, but we need an offense to score points and be creative. And that's not what we have. That's not what Bill Belichick will bring to the table. That's what we need. That's what a modern NFL team needs, in my opinion. I'm an offensive guy, always have been. So that's what we need to do going forward. As far as frankly, McCarthy's gone. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets fired during the season. Zimmer, he's not going to get fired during the season. Of course, he might even be interim when Mike's gone if he gets fired during the season. That's not really Jerry's style, but it's possible. But frankly, the coaches are probably going to get a lot of the blame, even though personnel decisions definitely attribute to most of the issues in my eyes, at least. So there's not a whole lot to be excited for this season. I think the jerseys are staying in the closet, as I said I was going to do last year. The off-season hype got me. The preseason hype got me, as I'm sure it did a lot of people. So it's just not worth it. It's not worth putting so much emotion and passion into a team that's not seriously trying to compete for anything. So we'll see. The only silver lining is that you got Dak and CD locked up for the next 4 years. So that's good. So we're not this season or bust, and then it's rebuild time. You have a chance to bring back Micah, and don't let the Joneses tell you that we can't afford it. Don't even let the Joneses tell you that we couldn't bring in Derrick Henry in the offseason, or Aaron Jones, or Josh Jacobs, or name your free agency running back here. We had plenty of money. Do not let them fool you into thinking that we're maxing out the cap. We are not. We are nowhere near. We have $20-some million in cap space right this second as I'm speaking, unless we sign someone that I didn't know, which there's no one you could even sign or maybe trade for that would be worth that much. Anyways, there's cap space and plenty of it to go around to build a competitive team. Dak, with his huge contract, is not taking up the whole cap space. Don't let them lie to you. Don't let anyone tell you that that's the case. In a couple years, when Dak is, 10th to 5th highest paid quarterback, it'll be fine. It'll work out. Everything always does. I unfortunately, with that silver lining, it's not a complete rebuild. You have your quarterback, you have your star receiver, you're going to have your star defensive end. You've got Trayvon Diggs still. Zach Martin's probably gone. That's not a silver lining. That is very sad. He is too old. He will probably retire after this year. You've got Tyler Guyton, who can hopefully improve. You got Cooper Beebe, who can improve. Tyler Smith, who's still young, who's really good. You have pieces, but you need the team to make active decisions to get better. And it cannot just be the same thing that they've always done, the same thing we've always done, and sign, some minimum deal free agent here and there, trade for some random guy who's backup on some team who's not using them, and rely on the draft. It hasn't worked. It's gotten you good pieces for sure. For sure. No doubt about it. Like I just listed all those guys off. Those are all draft picks. But you need the free agency piece to bring it all together. And that's what we're missing. And until that happens, as I mentioned before, the only chance of success is either, Dak goes crazy and single-handedly, Dak and CD single-handedly lead us because they just cannot be stopped, or, the ball bounces the wrong or the right way for us more than it has in the past. Like, other than that, there's no real way forward by doing this. Definition of insanity: doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. I think the Cowboys may be reaching, at least Jerry Jones may be reaching a stage of insanity. So until then, not a whole lot to be optimistic about. I mean, of course, I'm still going to watch. Like, still love football. Still love the Cowboys, as infuriating and annoying as they are. But they are now competitors until proven otherwise. They've had plenty of chances. They're coming off 3 straight 12-win seasons. And feel good stories and moral victories are gone. None of that matters. And I hate when people say, like, oh, none of their regular season stuff matters. It doesn't matter that they win 12 games. It doesn't even matter if we went 17-0. At this point, like, you've got to start turning some of this into actual success. And it's been years and years and years and years and years, long before my time, that it hasn't happened. And there's one common denominator, not Dak. It's not Dak's fault. He's been here 9 years, I think it is now. There hasn't been success under Dak. Wasn't success under Tony Romo. Limited success after, what was in 1993 and Troy Aikman and the triplets. Like, who's the common denominator from 1993 to now, or 1994 technically is when the Super Bowl was played. Like, there's one guy, one family. So until that common denominator starts changing, everything's going to come out the same way. So I think that's all I've got on the Cowboys, and maybe some crazy thing will happen. Maybe Jerry will wake up one day and make the biggest trade of his life. Multiple trades is what would be needed. I doubt it. So for the rest of the year, it's just going to be, what's our draft picks looking like? Who's progressing? Is Guyton progressing? Is BB progressing? Is anyone regressing? Is everyone staying healthy? And we'll fire up some mock drafts. I did one during the Ravens game. Got I forget his first name. I think it's like Ashton or something like that. Genty out of Boise State. That running back's going crazy right now. Need to bring him in. Anyways, well, plenty of time to talk about that, but Cowboys aren't looking good, unfortunately. I have to give in to what everyone's been saying for a while, and kind of don't believe them until you see it in the postseason. So, unfortunately, I'm on that train. I'm still a Dak believer. Don't throw me in with those Dak haters or anything like that, or Cowboys haters. Still my team, but sad season to almost be, not eliminated. Of course, it's only 3 weeks in, but it just feels that way already. We'll see. But until next time, hopefully we get a few more wins this year and make it at least respectable, but we'll see what happens. Until next time, go Cowboys.